I'm Lydia Hargrove, 34 years old, born and raised in San Francisco. My life revolves around sustainable design, just like my parents and grandparents did. Hargrove Designs, our family's boutique interior design firm, sits pretty in San Francisco's upscale design district. It's not just a business, it's my whole world. Growing up, I spent more time in the workshop than I did in playgrounds. While other kids were learning to ride bikes, I was learning to work with natural materials. My dad would sit me on his lap, his big callous hands guiding my smaller ones as we crafted pieces together. "Remember, Lydia," he'd say, his voice gruff but kind, "it's not just about making something pretty. It's about creating something that connects with nature and tells a story." Our family has a secret. No, we're not secretly environmental activists or anything like that. It's a technique for processing natural materials that makes them transform like nothing you've ever seen. This secret's been passed down for 3 generations, and it's what makes Hargrove Designs special. "Guard this technique with your life, Lydia," my dad told me on my 21st birthday. "It's not just our past, it's our future." And I did. I guarded it fiercely. It was my responsibility, my burden, and my ticket to success in a world that often didn't take a young woman designer seriously. Hargrove Designs wasn't just successful, it was thriving. We had a loyal clientele who appreciated the unique sustainable approach of our spaces. Other designers tried to figure out our technique, but none came close. The Sustainable Design Exhibition was always a stylish affair, but that year it felt different. Maybe it was the organic wine, or maybe it was the way my new recycled material dress highlighted my figure, but I felt electric that night. I made my way through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces and exchanging pleasantries. The room was filled with eco-conscious designers and business owners, everyone showcasing materials and concepts that probably cost more than my first apartment. "Lydia, darling, you look fabulous," gushed Olivia, one of our prominent clients. She grabbed my hands, her eyes zeroing in on the bracelet I was wearing. "Is this one of your new pieces?" "It's stunning." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Just finished it last week. It's part of our new Natural Elements collection. I simply must have you design my new office," Olivia declared. "I'll call your studio next week." As she fluttered off to network with her friends, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and found myself face to face with the most captivating pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. "Excuse me," said the owner of those eyes, flashing a smile that could melt ice. I couldn't help but overhear. "You're Lydia Hargrove, aren't you?" I nodded, suddenly feeling tongue-tied. "That's me." "And you are?" "Ethan Thornberry," he replied, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard great things about your sustainable design approach." Thornberry. The name hit me like a ton of bricks. The Thornberrys were interior design royalty, owners of one of the largest furniture chains in the country. And here was their heir, talking to me like I was the most interesting person in the room. "The pleasure's all mine," I managed to say, shaking his hand. "I didn't realize the Thornberrys would be here tonight." Ethan laughed, a rich, warm sound that made me feel like we were sharing an inside joke. "We usually skip these events, but I insisted on coming this year. I've been following your work, Lydia. You're making waves in the sustainable design world." I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's the truth," he said, his eyes twinkling. "In fact, I was hoping we could discuss a potential collaboration. How about dinner next week?" My heart skipped a beat. A collaboration with the Thornberrys could take Hargrove Designs to the next level. But a small voice in the back of my head whispered a warning. The Thornberrys were our biggest competitors. Could they be trusted? I pushed the thought aside. This was business, nothing more. "Dinner sounds great," I heard myself say. Ethan's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant set it up." He glanced over my shoulder and frowned slightly. "I'm afraid I have to mingle, but I'm looking forward to our dinner, Lydia." As he walked away, I felt like I was floating. Ethan Thornberry had sought me out. Me, Lydia Hargrove, the girl who spent more time with sustainable materials than people. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I danced, I laughed, I networked. But my mind kept drifting back to those blue eyes and that dazzling smile. Ethan had chosen an upscale organic restaurant in San Francisco, the kind of place where the who's who of the Bay Area came to see and be seen. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately, looking impossibly handsome in a sustainable linen suit. He stood up as I approached, his eyes lighting up. "Lydia," he said, taking my hand. "You look stunning." I felt a flutter in my stomach but pushed it down. "Thank you, Ethan. You clean up pretty well yourself." As we sipped our biodynamic wine, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about our shared passion for sustainable design, swapping stories about difficult clients and challenging projects. I found myself relaxing, drawn in by Ethan's wit and charm. "So," I said, as our locally sourced main courses arrived, "you mentioned a potential collaboration at the exhibition. What did you have in mind?" Ethan leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've been following your work for a while now, Lydia. The way you transform sustainable materials, it's unlike anything I've seen before. I think a partnership between Hargrove Designs and Thornberry Living could revolutionize the industry." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold statement. How exactly would this partnership work?" "We have the resources and the market reach," Ethan explained. "You have the innovation and the authentic commitment to sustainability. Together, we could create a collection that combines the best of both our worlds." It sounded tempting, I had to admit. But years of protecting our family technique made me cautious. "And what about our individual methods? Our proprietary processes?" Ethan held up his hands. "Those would remain separate, of course. This would be about combining our strengths, not revealing our secrets." I nodded slowly, turning the idea over in my mind. "It's an interesting proposition. I'd need to think about it, discuss it with my team." "Of course," Ethan said, his smile understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As dinner progressed, our conversation drifted from business to more personal topics. Ethan told me about growing up in the shadow of the Thornberry Empire, the pressure to live up to his family name. I found myself opening up about my own experiences, the weight of carrying on the Hargrove legacy. Before I knew it, we were seeing each other regularly. Ethan swept me off my feet with grand gestures and intimate moments. One weekend, he surprised me with a spontaneous trip to wine country and the Grand Canyon. "Pack a bag," he said, showing up at my door with a mischievous grin. "We're going on an adventure." I hesitated, thinking about the designs I needed to complete. "Ethan, I can't just leave. I have work." He silenced me with a kiss. "The work will be there when you get back." "When's the last time you took a break, Lydia?" I couldn't remember, and that realization made me pause. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did need a break. The trip was like a dream. We spent our days touring sustainable wineries, hiking breathtaking trails, and our evenings stargazing in the desert. It was intoxicating, being the center of Ethan's attention. Back in San Francisco, our relationship continued to blossom. Ethan would surprise me with rare sustainable materials from around the world, their unique textures reminding me of his thoughtfulness. We'd spend evenings at farm-to-table restaurants or quiet nights in, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Our Instagram quickly filled with perfectly curated photos of us together, hiking, attending gallery openings, and creating what looked like the perfect sustainable lifestyle. I found myself checking for likes and comments more often than I cared to admit. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The first time Ethan took me to meet his parents, I felt like I'd stepped into a corporate boardroom disguised as a home. Beatrice Thornberry, Ethan's mother, looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "So, you're the little designer Ethan's been spending so much time with," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. That's right. Lydia Hargrove of Hargrove Designs. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Thornberry. Harrison Thornberry, Ethan's father, was a bit warmer, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. Hargrove Designs, he mused. You've been making quite a name for yourself lately. Impressive for such a small operation. The dinner was a minefield of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. At one point, Beatrice publicly criticized my views on sustainability. "Oh, these little boutique approaches are charming," she announced to everyone at the table, "but real environmental change requires scale, doesn't it? Something a small operation couldn't possibly understand." I plastered on a smile, even as I seethed inside. Actually, Mrs. Thornberry, innovative solutions often start small before they transform industries. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. Later, as he drove me home, he apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry about my parents," he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They can be difficult." I sighed, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. "It's okay. I'm sure they're just protective of you." Ethan shook his head. "It's not okay. You're important to me, Lydia. They need to accept that." His words warmed my heart, pushing away the lingering chill from his parents' cold reception. As weeks turned into months, I found myself falling harder for Ethan. He was everything I'd never known I wanted: charming, worldly, and seemingly head over heels for me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated for more than just my craft. We'd been dating for about 8 months when he surprised me with a trip to Key West. "Pack your bags, darling," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "We're off to paradise." And so I found myself in Key West, strolling hand in hand with Ethan along the beach, marveling at the sunset and indulging in fresh seafood. It was like a dream. On our last night in Key West, Ethan arranged a private dinner on the beach. As we finished our dessert with the sound of waves lapping at the shore, he suddenly looked nervous. "Lydia," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine my world without you." He stood up and, to my shock, got down on one knee in the sand. The soft lights strung around our private dining area seemed to glow brighter. "Lydia Hargrove," Ethan said, pulling out a small velvet box, "will you marry me?" I stared at the ring in shock. It was beautiful, with what he called ethically sourced stones, but a small part of me couldn't help but notice something wasn't quite right about the materials. I pushed that thought aside, focusing instead on the man kneeling before me, his eyes full of hope and love. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." When we returned to San Francisco, reality came crashing back. Ethan's parents insisted on throwing us an engagement party, and I found myself thrust into a world of tech elites and old money that I'd only ever observed from the outside. The party was a lavish affair at the Thornberry estate. As I circulated among San Francisco's elite, I couldn't help but feel out of place. These people lived in a different world than I did, a world of wealth and ingrained privilege thinly veiled behind talk of sustainability. Beatrice Thornberry cornered me by the organic champagne bar, her smile as sharp as recycled glass. "Lydia, darling, I must say we were all quite surprised when Ethan announced your engagement. It's not often a Thornberry marries someone from such a modest background." Before I could respond, Ethan appeared at my side, placing a protective arm around my waist. "Mother, I hope you're not giving Lydia a hard time." Beatrice's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not, darling. I was just welcoming Lydia to the family." The irony wasn't lost on me that the eco-themed engagement party featured exotic flowers flown in from across the world and enough waste to fill a landfill, despite all the talk of sustainability. Later that night, as Ethan and I slow danced under the living plant chandeliers, he leaned in close. "I have an idea," he whispered. "Why don't you design a special space for my mother's charity office as a peace offering? Show her what you can do." I hesitated. The Hargrove family techniques weren't something I shared lightly, even with my fiancé. But maybe Ethan was right. Maybe this could be a way to bridge the gap between our two worlds. The weeks following our engagement were a whirlwind of wedding planning. I threw myself into creating the perfect sustainable office design for Beatrice's charity, hoping it would be the olive branch that could finally win her over. I spent countless hours in my studio, pouring my heart and soul into the design. I used rare sustainable materials and implemented our family's special treatment techniques that brought out extraordinary textures and colors. It was to be my masterpiece, a testament to my skill and the Hargrove family secret. One evening, as I was finalizing the material samples and mood boards, Ethan stopped by the studio. His eyes widened. "Lydia, it's incredible. I've never seen materials transformed like this." I felt a surge of pride. "Do you think your mother will like it?" Ethan nodded, his eyes still fixed on the samples. "She'd be a fool not to. The way these materials interact with light, it's almost otherworldly." I smiled, pleased with his reaction. That's the Hargrove touch. The next week, I was at the Thornberry estate for another wedding planning session. Suddenly, I heard raised voices coming from down the hall. I slipped out of the room and followed the sound. As I got closer, I could make out what they were saying. "You're being ridiculous, Ethan," came Harrison's deep voice. "This marriage is a golden opportunity. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet now." "It's not like that," Ethan protested. "But nothing," Beatrice's shrill voice cut in. "You've done well, darling. She's eating out of the palm of your hand. Soon we'll have everything we need." I edged closer to the partially open door, my heart pounding in my chest. Through the crack, I could see Ethan pacing back and forth, sipping wine from a glass. "You should see how eagerly she's working on that office design," he said, and I felt my world tilt on its axis. "She has no idea she's handing over the keys to her entire legacy." Beatrice's laugh pierced the air like a knife. "And to think we almost objected to you marrying that little nobody. I must say, Ethan, your acting skills have improved tremendously. She actually believes you love her." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a mistake. But Harrison's next words shattered any lingering doubt. "Once we have the Hargrove sustainable processing technique, we'll corner the market," he said, his voice filled with smug satisfaction. "Who cares if her quaint little studio goes under? It's just business, after all." I felt like I was going to be sick. My vision blurred with unshed tears as the full weight of their betrayal hit me. Ethan, the man I thought I loved, the man I had agreed to marry, had been using me all along. The days following my shocking discovery were a blur of emotions and careful planning. On the surface, I played the part of the excited bride-to-be perfectly. I gushed over wedding color schemes, fretted about venue details, and continued work on Beatrice's office design. But inside, I was seething with rage and plotting my revenge. "How's the design coming along, darling?" Ethan asked one evening, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I worked in my studio. I fought the urge to flinch away from his touch. "Almost done," I replied, forcing a smile. "Your mother is going to love it." Late into the night, after Ethan had gone home, I began creating a new collection called Transparency. Each piece was a work of art, telling the story of environmental deception through innovative designs and thoughtfully selected sustainable materials. But design wasn't my only focus. One day, I accessed Ethan's unlocked tablet and downloaded all the files I could find. I spent hours poring over the Thornberry Company documents, looking for any discrepancies or signs of wrongdoing. It was tedious work, but my determination fueled me. One night, as I was going through their product specifications, something caught my eye. The Thornberrys had been systematically labeling furniture as eco-friendly while using toxic materials and unsustainable practices, greenwashing their way to millions in profits. The next challenge was gathering evidence of their plot against me. I installed a recording app on my phone and began documenting our conversations. It felt uncomfortable, but I reminded myself that they had started this game. I was just finishing it. As the final week before the charity event arrived, I put the finishing touches on my plan. I had evidence of the Thornberry greenwashing scheme, recordings of their plot against me, and a collection that would shock San Francisco's elite to its core. The morning of the Thornberry Charity Gala dawned bright and clear, a perfect San Francisco day. As I arrived at the waterfront venue, my heart was pounding, but my resolve was firm. I clutched my portfolio containing my new collection designs and all the evidence I'd gathered like a lifeline. "Lydia, there you are." Ethan's friend, Dominic, called out as I entered. "Everyone's been looking for you. Are you ready for the big reveal?" I gave him a tight smile. "More ready than you know." As I was ushered into a preparation room to wait, I could hear the murmur of guests arriving outside. San Francisco's elite, all gathered to witness what they thought would be the unveiling of Beatrice's new eco-friendly charity headquarters. If only they knew. The event began, and I was introduced to present my design. Faces turned to watch me, smiling and expectant. I saw Beatrice and Harrison in the front row, looking smug and satisfied. Ethan stood nearby, beaming with pride. But as I reached the podium, instead of beginning my presentation as planned, I turned to face the assembled guests. "I'm afraid this won't be the presentation you expected today," I announced, my voice clear and strong. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan's face contorted in confusion. "Lydia, what are you doing?" I ignored him, addressing the guests instead. "Instead, I'll be unveiling my newest collection, Transparency: A Study in Environmental Truth." With that, I opened my portfolio and began to explain each design one by one, highlighting the symbolism behind each piece. The twisted wood table representing corporate deception. The fractured glass installation symbolizing broken promises. The color-changing wall treatment reflecting the shifting nature of corporate greenwashing. As I spoke, I saw understanding and horror dawn on the Thornberry faces. But I wasn't done yet. "And for the grand finale," I said, revealing Beatrice's office design, a special commission with a hidden message. I displayed the 3D rendering from a specific angle, revealing the word truth subtly integrated into the design elements. The crowd gasped, this time in a mix of shock and admiration. "Lydia, stop this nonsense right now." Harrison Thornberry bellowed, his face red with anger. But I was beyond stopping. I presented the documents I'd gathered, played the recordings I'd made. "The Thornberrys aren't just frauds in love," I announced. "They're frauds in business too." I proceeded to lay out the evidence of their greenwashing scheme, sharing recordings of their plot against me and Hargrove Designs. With each revelation, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, shocked faces turning to the Thornberrys for explanation. "This is preposterous." Beatrice shrieked, but her voice was shaking. As event staff began to escort the sputtering Thornberrys from the stage, I addressed the crowd one final time. "I stand before you not as a designer seeking approval, but as a businesswoman protecting her legacy. Hargrove Designs will continue to create truly sustainable spaces without compromising our integrity." The aftermath was chaos. Reporters who had come to cover a charity event found themselves with a much bigger story. Photos of my confrontation and innovative designs splashed across social media and digital publications worldwide. In the days following what the press dubbed the transparency takedown, my life became a whirlwind of interviews, legal consultations, and damage control. The story had exploded beyond San Francisco, capturing national attention. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications from journalists, industry insiders, and even environmental activists interested in my story. I sat in my studio, surrounded by material samples and my laptop open to dozens of news sites, all featuring my face on the homepage. The headlines ranged from design of deception, designer exposes corporate greenwashing, to love, lies, and luxury living, the Hargrove Thornberry scandal. The Thornberry empire crumbled under the weight of the scandal, with multiple consumer lawsuits filed against them. My best friend and now marketing consultant, Zoe, burst through the door, her tablet displaying even more online coverage and PR opportunities. Lydia, she said, placing her tablet on my design table, we need to talk strategy. Your Instagram followers have tripled overnight, and we've got at least a dozen podcast and interview requests lined up. I carefully chose which platforms to engage with. I spoke about the importance of authenticity in sustainable design, the need for stricter environmental certifications, and my vision for a truly ethical industry. As the weeks turned into months, the digital frenzy began to die down, but my resolve only grew stronger. I channeled my energy into Hargrove Designs, pushing myself to create more innovative approaches while maintaining our commitment to genuine sustainability. One evening, as I was leaving the studio, a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Miss Hargrove, she said hesitantly, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you. I tilted my head, confused. Thank me for what? She smiled sadly. I furnished my entire home with thornberry pieces marketed as eco-friendly for my family with chemical sensitivities. After your exposé, I had their materials tested. Turns out they contained the very toxins they claimed to eliminate. Thanks to you, I was able to create a truly safe home for my children. I felt a lump form in my throat. I'm glad I could help. As she walked away, I realized that my actions had affected real people, not just faceless consumers. The scandal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for positive change in the industry. And I, Lydia Hargrove, was just getting started.